The playoff is here, and me personally, I am so excited. I know I'm a little bit late, but listen, yesterday was a busy day for me, so I didn't really get around to, being able to sit down and tell y'all what I think. But listen, here we are, better late than never. And before I even get into the playoff and the teams in it, we must address the elephant in the room. Or, in this instance, the elephant not in the room. And that's Alabama being left out. And me personally, I love it. I love it. I love that the committee did it. That the committee grew some balls and left Alabama out the playoff. Because in all honesty, they ain't deserve to be in there. I mean, yes, I understand people like, oh, but look at their wins. Yeah, your wins are cool, and I love your wins. But what about your losses? And I know a lot of people were comparing Alabama to SMU and saying, okay, Alabama has much better wins. Yeah, that's true. But Alabama has worse losses. I mean, they lost to Vanderbilt and Oklahoma. And I know Vanderbilt is having themselves a great rebuilding year, a year that can really, be a jumping off point for great things in their future. But you're Alabama. You cannot lose that game, no matter what. No matter what. I don't care. You can't lose to Vanderbilt and expect to make the playoff. You can't lose to Oklahoma in an extremely down year and expect to make the playoff. And even in comparison with SMU, SMU's two losses are BYU to start the year, and that ended up looking like a really, really good loss. Then to Clemson in the ACC championship game, in a game where it's like, I can make a debate that SMU lost that game more than Clemson won it, and we'll talk about that later. But it's like, if you would have just beat Vanderbilt, if you would have just beat Oklahoma, just one of those two teams, you would be in. You would be in. And the Tennessee loss, I'm excusing that one because, for all extensive purposes, that is a good loss. But even when you look at that game, it's like Alabama should have won that game. That's what's so funny about this 2024 Alabama team is that at their best, there's no doubt in my mind that they're one of the 12 best teams in the nation. But the funny thing about that is they don't always play at their best. They really don't. Like, it's so weird how we have a team that beats Georgia pretty convincingly, and then in the same season lose to Vanderbilt, lose to Oklahoma. Earlier in that year, before that game, they were in a dogfight with USF. I know that final score indicates that maybe they just pulled away at the last second, but no. Go back and watch that game. If you watch that game, you will see. It was a dogfight all the way up until like damn near halfway through the fourth quarter. Like, it's so weird. And like I said, they have good losses, but then they just have other like piss poor performances. It's so up and down. Their, level of play varies so much. So I understand why they're not included, because they did not deserve it. This is your fault, Alabama. You can't blame nobody else for you not being in there. You lost games you should have won. You did. And don't give me none of that bullshit of, okay, we're just not going to schedule any more hard non-conference games. Y'all didn't schedule any this year. Y'all did not. Y'all did not have one single non-conference game that was tough, that was eye-opening, that was like, that's an interesting game. I mean, maybe Wisconsin, but Wisconsin has not been Wisconsin for the past few years. Your non-conference schedule this year included Mercer, included Western Kentucky, USF like we talked about, and Wisconsin. That's not no crazy non-conference schedule. That's really not. Georgia had a much tougher schedule, and they just won the SEC championship game. You cannot give me that bullshit. You cannot. Alabama, this is on you. I don't feel bad for y'all. And that's why you're probably not hearing much from people really inside that program about them being upset, because if they're smart, they know this is on them. You lost to Vanderbilt. Why do you think you now get a chance to play for a national championship? You lost 2 games you should have won. It's that simple. You can't blame anybody else but yourself. So I'm done talking about Bama. I'm done talking about teams that did not make it. We're just going to focus on, the playoff as of right now. And I'm going to give y'all a few takeaways. I'm not really going to go in depth into the games, because I'm going to do that more next week. But I'm just going to, talk about some of my takeaways from the review. The first thing I want to say is, and I think this is a pretty popular thing to say, something I've seen a lot of people say, is I don't know if I like having an automatic bye. I like the automatic bid. Yes, if you win your conference championship, you do deserve a chance to compete for the national championship. And that's fine. I wholeheartedly agree with that, because then we'll be rendering conference championship games useless and meaningless, and I don't like that. Those games mean a lot, and they should. But I don't like the automatic bye, because even though I love Arizona State, and I really do, like that game they had against Iowa State was so impressive. Even though I picked them to win, I thought we were going to be in for a good game. But no, Arizona State just said, all right, listen up. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to give this ball to Scatterboo. He's going to punch y'all in the mouth. We're going to attack y'all over top. Our offense is going to be able to do whatever they want, whenever they want. And then also our defense is going to play a really great game and force a lot of turnovers on the Iowa State team that doesn't turn the ball over. And again, they did all that without their number one wide receiver. I remember talking to one of my dad's friends and seeing him saying, okay, I picked Iowa State because they're missing their top receiver. And that was a great point. But it didn't matter. I mean, this Arizona State may be a lot better than we give them credit for. And Cameron Scatterboo should definitely be in the Heisman Trophy conversation. Not winning it at all. I don't think he should win it, but should definitely be in that conversation. But yeah, I don't know if they deserve a bye. Like, they are not one of the 4 best teams in the country. And that's really the only problem I have. Everybody else has a ton of other problems with it. I personally don't. I just think you should just seed it all naturally, but just make sure conference champions are auto bids. Make it like March Madness if we're doing it like that. You don't see March Madness say, okay, if you win a conference championship, you get a bye. No. If you win a conference championship, you win. I ain't telling you where you're going to be, but yeah, you win. So that's really my only problem, because then you have weird things where it's like Oregon earned the number 1 seed, and the team they beat in the Big Ten championship game is getting rewarded while they're kind of sort of getting punished. I mean, if you look at Oregon's side of the bracket, for them to make it to the national championship game, they're going to have to beat 2 out of the 3 of Ohio State, Tennessee, or Texas. That's tough. Like, their first game will be the winner of Ohio State, Tennessee, and whoever wins that game is a really good team. And then after that, if they win that, they're probably going to play Texas, because yes, while I'm not predicting anything yet or making my prediction, they're going to be a double-digit favorite against Clemson. If they beat Clemson, they're going to be a double-digit favorite against Iowa State. So it's looking like that's who they have to go through. And that's kind of unfair, because then when you look at Penn State, it's like, no disrespect to SMU, but no matter how good SMU is, that's a team from Dallas having to come up to Happy Valley in December. I don't care how good you are. That's going to be tough, because that weather is not going to be good. I will put great money on that. And then after that, they play Boise State. And Boise State is a pretty good team, but it's like both those games, Penn State holds the talent advantage, they hold the roster advantage, and in both those games, they're probably going to be double-digit favorites. So it's like, it's kind of funny how that works out. I don't really like that. I think they should just reseed everything. That's just me and my personal opinion. Hopefully they listen, because I'm so smart. But hey, what do I know? But back to the teams involved. I do also have a few takeaways from conference championship weekend. And my first one, I'm so disappointed in Texas. I watched that entire SEC championship game. I sat down and I was glued to the TV, because I mean, that was looking like it was going to be the best game. And also, I wanted Texas to finally prove me right. All year, I've been talking about how I thought Texas was the best team in the country, even after the first Georgia loss, which was bad, but that's one of those losses where it's like, okay, cool, it happens. Everything in that game seemed to be breaking in Georgia's favor. So it's like, okay, those happen. Maybe a game just got away from you. But this time, you should win this game. You should. I picked them. I thought they were going to win. And you lost the game where everything broke in your favor. If you're Texas, if I told Texas, you're going to be leading going into halftime, right before the half, Carson Beck is going to get hurt. He's going to be out for the rest of the game. Do you win that ball game? Every single Texas fan, every single member of that program, every single person in that program, and even some Georgia fans are going to say, oh shit, Texas is going to win. Nah, they lost. They lost to a backup quarterback. And the thing is, it's funny, Gunnar Stockton, who did terrific in my opinion, having to come in on short notice with no playing experience and lead your team to a victory, that's amazing. But he didn't play spectacular. He didn't do anything out of the ordinary. He didn't do anything crazy. It wasn't like when they benched Jalen Hurts and brought in Tua. It wasn't like that at all. He just did enough. Shoot, he even threw a pick that probably should have ended the game if that Texas DB doesn't celebrate and turns around and blocks. Because if he blocks that dude that ended up making the tackle, on that interception, that's a pick six. Texas wins. We're not having this conversation right now, but instead we are. Texas choked. That's it. That's the bottom line. And in this game, I said the running game will matter. Whichever team can dominate the line of scrimmage will win this game. And this was yet another game where Texas played Georgia and they could not run the ball. They could not. They could not. They struggled to get anything going on the ground. And it's so disappointing that they were struggling to get anything going on the ground. And Arch Manning only had one carry. I talked so much about how Arch Manning was going to be an X factor because we saw what Haynes King did to Georgia. And Texas did none of that. I am so confused with how few snaps Arch Manning got, especially in a game where Quinn Ewers did not play that well. He didn't play terrible, but he didn't play good either. He did not play good enough to win, honestly. I know he had 2 picks. One of them was very bad. The first one was not his fault at all. That's on the receiver. You just got to catch that ball, man. It hits you in the hands, catch it. But still, it could have been the Jalen Hurts getting subbed out for Tua thing for Texas. Because like I said, I've always been of the belief that Arch Manning is probably the best quarterback on that roster, but for some reason he's not playing right now. I kind of understand his politics is this and that. Okay, cool. But why don't you put him in at any point? Give him an extensive run. Don't just put him in there for a few plays. And even the plays you put him in there for, we barely got to see what makes him special, which is his legs. And a running quarterback has been proven to give Georgia problems, and you did not do that at all. Now, before I even get to the winner, the one thing I have to ask people about Texas, and one thing that I'm slowly coming to the realization of, I think Texas is overrated. I think we've looked at this team on paper and saw the talent and saw everything they should be and said, okay, if that team shows up, then that team's the best team in the country. But the thing about football is, it's not played on paper. It's played on the field. And on the field, they have not showed it. And some of that's not their fault because their schedule was not crazy. I mean, literally the only good team they played is Georgia. Early in the year, we thought that Michigan game was a big win, but it turns out it's not because Michigan is not the team we thought they were. It's funny me saying that because I'm an Ohio State fan, but that sentiment is still true, and that's why it hurts so much that Ohio State lost that game. But it's like, you didn't play that many good teams. That's fine. You can only play who's on your schedule. But when greeted by one of those teams, in the first game, you got dominated. You got dominated. Georgia punched you in the mouth and said, get up, and you were like, nah, I'm not. But I'll be back. And you came back. You came back. You had it loaded. You were ready to spin the block. You were ready to get your revenge. You raised your weapon. And the gun jammed. And the gun jammed. And the gun jammed all while the man that you're trying to shoot, he don't even got a gun. He just got a knife. And he still kill you. That's what Georgia has basically done to Texas. And it's funny to me how Georgia is to Texas what Alabama was to Georgia. It's looking like that's going to be a hump that's going to be extremely hard for Texas to get over. Because looking at this game, looking at this matchup, looking at all this stuff, Georgia did not have the better roster. But they still came in there and won. They still came in there and did their thing. You know, and that's why I'm going to talk about Georgia in a second, but what they're doing is so impressive. So I asked the question, is Texas overrated? Are we looking too much at this roster and not the product they're putting out there on the field? You know? And which, if that's the case, then it makes their first round game against Clemson interesting. Because while I have my big questions about Clemson still, even after the ACC championship victory, it's like, if Texas is overrated, what's going to happen in that game? I mean, Vanderbilt almost beat Texas. They did. Arkansas played Texas close. They did. Texas A&M played Texas close. What could Clemson possibly do? You know? Like, before, if you would have told me before this weekend that Clemson and Texas were playing in the first round, I would probably give Texas a 21-point cushion. But now I don't know. Because maybe this team is not as good as we thought they were. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that I don't think Quinn Ewers is the man we thought he was. You know? He doesn't seem like it. He's not bad by any stretch of the imagination, but in these big games against good teams, he is too inconsistent. He is too inconsistent. He is too up and down. He shows too many flashes and doesn't give you the whole thing. If he's the quarterback that we thought he was, if he's the 5-star we envisioned him coming out of South Carroll in Texas, I remember because he committed to Ohio State and he was a big get. If he was that dude that we thought he was going to be coming out of high school, Texas is undefeated right now. That's the one weakness I see on this Texas team is that quarterback position. And I wouldn't be surprised, given this little extended rest before the first playoff game, if we see Archie Manning take a lot more snaps for Texas, you know? Because I'm honestly of the opinion at this point in time, to win a national championship, you need Arch. But to the winner of that game, Georgia. I may have underrated Georgia. Georgia is going to be a scary team to see in the playoff. I know as it stands right now, Carson Beck is hurt and he's going to miss that first playoff game and probably a game after that. Like, I don't know about the health of Carson Beck. But I don't think this is a team you want to see, man. This is not. Georgia played one of the toughest schedules in the country. They played Clemson, Ole Miss, Alabama, Texas twice, Tennessee, and Florida, who, when DJ Lagway plays, is a good team. And DJ Lagway played for a majority of that game until he got hurt. This Georgia team is battle-tested. And they're going to be given a 2-3 week break that they desperately need. This team is banged up, injured, tired, probably emotionally spent. Like, they just came off of back-to-back weeks in nail-biters, in overtime games, overtime classics. That first one, an 8 OT classic against Georgia Tech. And this one, even though it was just 1 OT, that's high-level football you're playing. That's a lot on the body, mind, and soul. So they really need this break, and they're going to benefit a lot from it. And they're also going to benefit from the standpoint it gives them a lot of time to give Gunnar Stockton ready. You know, he clearly has the talent. He clearly has he has the tools. He just doesn't all too well know what he's doing, and he hasn't seen a lot of football. So I think even with that, Georgia's really not a team you want to see. And also, like I said, that side of the bracket they're on, it's not hard, man. It's not hard. They play the winner of Notre Dame and Indiana. If they beat that, they're either going to play Boise State, SMU, or Penn State. And if I'm Georgia, I look at all those other teams on my side of the bracket and say, okay, I ain't scared. Yeah, y'all some good teams, but I ain't scared. I'm Georgia. And honestly, there's no better coach in college football right now than Kirby Smart. There is none. There's no coach I trust more to get his guys up and ready to play in a football game. This is not your Georgia team of the past 3 years. This team is not even as talented as I think last year's team was, but they're winning football games. They get it done. It's something about having that confidence, having that guy running the machine that knows what he's doing and is just an excellent football mind while also being an excellent motivator of other human beings. Like, there's a possibility, no disrespect to Oregon, that Georgia's the best team in college football. They're the most battle-tested. They've been through the most. Understand they have 2 losses, but their 2 losses aren't bad losses. They lost to Alabama, and like I said about Alabama, when Alabama's Alabama, Bama, man. That makes sense. And Ole Miss, who is another one of those teams where it's like, they should be here, but they're not here because they lost to Florida. So it's like, Georgia. Is it just going to be Georgia winning it again? Like, is Georgia the new Bama in the sense where even when you damn near about to count them out, they still breathing? They still breathing. Have to cut the head off the snake, and they just, and teams just not doing that, you know? SMU choked. SMU should be one of the teams getting a first round bye, but they choked. That game against Clemson, I understand Clemson won. They choked. They started off slow, and then the second half, and especially that fourth quarter, they dominated. They did everything they needed to do. But a bad special teams play cost them that game. Because me personally, if that game goes into overtime, SMU is winning it. They have all the momentum. They are riding high. That offense is being able to do whatever they want against that defense, and that Clemson offense was starting to stall. And when that Clemson offense starts to stall, things get bad, man. Things get bad for them, and it was getting bad for them. But they just couldn't cover a kick well enough. Because if you cover that kick well, you're walking into overtime, and I think you win. I think you have a first-round bye, and you have a much better draw than having to go to Happy Valley. Penn State's a really good football team. Now you have to go play them in their natural habitat. You have to play them in the cold. And your team, while I think this SMU team is so much fun, they're so fast, they fly around, they're a high-powered offense, they're not built for that, man. They're not built for that. And also, they're from Dallas. You have a bunch of Southern kids. That's going to be a hard thing for them to, that's a tough spot, man. It's so tough. And when I look at the playoff, when I look at these games, all these games are interesting to me. I mean, Tennessee, that game is so interesting. SEC Big Ten showdown. Tennessee is in this game with literally no pressure on them, because nobody's talking about Tennessee. Which is funny because Tennessee is one of those teams Tennessee is that team that I could see them being one and done, but I can also see them winning the whole thing. They had the talent, they had the people, they had the coach, they have all the tools. They just got to kind of do it. That's a tough spot for Ohio State. All the pressure's on you, and Tennessee comes in with no pressure because nobody's talking about Tennessee. Nobody's talking about how good of a football team that is. And then, like I already said, Texas Clemson is so interesting. And Texas Clemson is why I like the idea of a 12-team playoff. I like it because you get teams that have never played each other playing each other. It's so crazy that Clemson and Texas have never played, but now they're playing. And I'm actually pretty excited about that game because the thought of Clemson in Austin, Texas, and also Cade Klubnik having to go back home because that's where he is from, him being a Texas high school football legend around those parts, like him in high school had me thinking he was going to be the real deal coming into college football. And he's still a good quarterback, but I thought he was going to be the next, I thought he was going to be one of those ones. And then, like I said, you have SMU Penn State, which is very interesting on so many levels. There's so many things about that game that's so interesting. Just a Dallas team having to come up to play a Big Ten team in December. The matchups, all that stuff. It's going to be so interesting to talk about. And then the game that I think nobody is talking about at all, like I think we just throw it to the side, but oh my goodness, what's going to happen, is Indiana and Notre Dame. Two of those teams that I think mirror Tennessee, where it's like we just haven't spoke about them. But they're here. And that is the battle for Indiana. And I honestly don't know what's going to happen in that game. I know I'm not giving away predictions or anything, but it's like both those teams are so similar. They haven't played too many like really, really good teams, but they have handled their business when they need to handle their business. And it's like, yeah, I just don't know. I think I just love the idea of this playoff. And my last little point, and this is a big point to me. If you're expanding the playoff to 12 teams and you're adding all these games, I think it's time to shorten the regular season. I think it's time. I don't like having kids have to play damn near 16, 17 games in a year and you not compensating them for it. Like, football is not the type of sport that you just add extra games to. You're not. It's too physically demanding. The health risk is too crazy, and that's coming from a football player, for you to feel comfortable adding all these games without any incentive. And I think if they're smart, and honestly, if they're just smart for the product, because adding all these games, you're going to see teams' rosters start to get decimated. And that's just naturally how football is. No team is fully healthy at the end of a football season. No team is fully healthy after the first game of the year. So imagine what it's like 15, 16, 17 weeks in, and it's like you're already shortening the rosters, and I just think if everybody's smart, you shorten the season, you take away some of those non-conference games, and you just shorten the year. You continue to have this 12-team playoff, and if you want to expand it, you expand it. But if you're going to expand it, especially if you're going to expand it more, I feel like you have to shorten the season. That's the smartest thing to do for the health of the players and also for, the betterment of the product. You're going to get a much better product. You're going to get a much better product if these teams are healthy, in my personal opinion. But those are my takeaways from championship weekend and also the college football playoff. I can't wait to talk about this more next week when I give you my predictions and my rundowns. But, I love y'all. Let me know down in the comments what you think. What are some interesting matchups? What are some of your takeaways? What are your just overall thoughts and opinions? And I love y'all. I'm going to talk to y'all later. Peace.